Hello students. Today we will have a lecture on 5th unit of the midwifery and obstetrical nursing, that is the physiology and management of normal puerperium. Introduction. The puerperium is a period of approximately 6 weeks which commences following completion of third stage of labor. Third stage of labor, that is the placental stage, where the expulsion of placenta takes place. During this time, the woman recovers from the stresses of pregnancy, means during this 6 weeks of period, the woman will recover from the stress of the pregnancy, delivery, and some physiological adaptations which have been occurred during the pregnancy. These changes will subside, facilitating the restoration of non-pregnant state. Here are some definitions of puerperium. First definition, according to Simon, the puerperium is defined as the 6 weeks period commencing after the completion of third stage of labor. So according to Simon, the puerperium is the period of 6 weeks after the completion of third stage of labor, that is after the delivery of placenta. Second definition is according to the Philip, the puerperium is refers to the 6 weeks period following childbirth when considerable adjustments occur before return to the pre-pregnant state. According to Philip, puerperium is the 6 weeks period where the mother will have all the considerable adjustments which will be like a non-pregnant state. So the period which required to gain the non-pregnant state, that period is called as the puerperium. Next definition, puerperium is defined as the time from delivery of placenta through the first few weeks after the delivery. Next one is the puerperium is the period, that is the postpartum period, is the period of time following the delivery of child, during which the body tissue, especially the reproductive system, revert back to the pre-pregnant state both anatomically and physiologically. According to this, the puerperium is the period following the delivery of child, in which all the body tissues, especially of the reproductive system, will revert back to their pre-pregnant state, and the changes will be anatomically and physiologically. Anatomically means the structurally changes will occur, and physiologically means the functional changes will occur on the organs of reproductive system as well as other systems. Last one is, it is the period of adjustment after pregnancy and delivery when anatomical and physiological changes of pregnancy are reversed and the body returns to the normal non-pregnant state. Next is the stages of puerperium or duration of puerperium, in which the puerperium period or the postpartum period has been divided into 3 stages, that is immediate, early and remote. Early puerperium is the period of first 24 hours after parturition. Then early puerperium, that is the first week postpartum, and third one is the remote puerperium, which includes the period of time required for involution of genital organs through the 6th week postpartum. Next we will discuss the anatomical and physiological changes which occurs during the puerperium. First we will discuss the reproductive system, because reproductive system is the most confined system where most of the changes takes place. First we will see the uterus. Before going to the changes, we must know the term involution. The involution, it is the term used to refer to the retrogressive changes taken place in all of the organs and structures of the reproductive system. So here we will see the involution of uterus, that is the return of uterus to a non-pregnant state after childbirth. Involution process begins immediately after expulsion of placenta with contraction of uterine smooth muscles. At this end of third stage of labor, that is after expulsion of placenta, the uterus is in the midline about 2 cm below the level of umbilicus and weighs about 1000 gram. And within few hours after the delivery, the fundus goes up above the umbilicus. By 24 hours postpartum, the uterus is about at the same size it was at 20 gestational weeks. And then the fundus descends about 1 to 2 cm every 24 hours, that is the per day. If the woman is preemie, then descent will be at 1 centimeter per day. If the woman is multi, then the descent will be like 1.5 to 2 centimeter per day. And by the 6th postpartum day, it is located halfway between the symphysis pubis and the umbilicus. The uterus lies in the true pelvis within 2 weeks after childbirth. At the 6th week postpartum, the uterus will be at the normal size, that is of the non-pregnant state. Next we will see the weight changes of the uterus. It will weigh about 1000 gram immediately after birth, then 500 gram at first week after birth, that is the first week postpartum, then 300 gram 2 weeks postpartum, then 50 gram at the 6th week postpartum, that is the weight of non-pregnant uterus, 50 to 60 gram, and it will be commenced on the 6th week postpartum. The endometrial lining will start to rapidly regenerate by the day 16th. The placental site undergoes a series of changes in the postpartum period. In this image, you can see the involution of uterus. That is, immediately following delivery, the fundus is 1 finger breadth above the umbilicus, and which weighs about 1000 gram and measures 15 into 12 into 8 to 10 centimeter in length, width and thickness respectively. On the day first, the fundus will descend 1 to 2 centimeter according to parity. per day, and gradually it will descend into the pelvis. On the 10th day, the fundus will be non-palpable abdominally, and it will descend completely into the or below the symphysis pubis. At any time in the postpartum period, if the top of fundus is above the umbilicus or it is not descending according the day passes on, the midwife should consider that there will be a filling of uterus with blood or blood clot, or there may be presence of remnant of the uh, placenta or membranes. So midwife should exclude the cause of the non-descent of the fundus. Next we will see lochia. It is the uterine discharge that occurs after birth. Lochia is initially bright red, changing later to a pinkish red or reddish brown, and later on whitish. For the first 2 hours after birth, the amount of lochia should be about that of a heavy menstrual period. After that time, the lochial flow should be steadily decrease. Lochia contains the slugging of the decidual tissue, including erythrocyte, epithelial cells, and bacteria. Lochia is assessed according to its amount, color, and change with activity and time. The descriptive name of lochia changes with the change in color. So here we will discuss the three types of lochia. First one is the lochia rubra. Lochia rubra is the term given for a discharge in first 3 to 4 days after childbirth. It is a bright red colored and consisting of blood, decidual and trophoblastic debris. Second one is the lochia serosa. It primarily consists of the blood, serum, leukocyte and tissue debris. The lochia changes into the color of pink or brown, and it will be from 4 to 10 days postpartum. Third one is the lochia alba. It is a whitish yellow creamy discharge which will occur from 10 to 15th day postpartum. It is consisting of the leukocyte, decidua, epithelial cells, mucus and bacteria. Lochia alba may continue to drain for up to and beyond 6 weeks after childbirth. The amount of lochia is usually increases with ambulation and breastfeeding. Persistence of lochia rubra early in the postpartum period suggests continued bleeding as a result of retained fragments of the placenta or membranes. When the client is bleeding heavily, the nurse needs to ensure that the bleeding is not coming from any another source. So, the midwife should conclude for the another source of vaginal bleeding. It may be cervical or vaginal laceration. That lacerations are highly suspected when the heavy bleeding continues. Next, we will discuss the changes which occur on the cervix. Immediately after delivery, the cervix is extremely soft. It may be bruised and edematous after the childbirth for the several days. The cervical os, which is dilated to 10 cm during labor, that closes gradually. It may still possible to introduce two fingers into cervical os for the first 4 to 6 postpartum days. The external cervical os never regains its pregnancy appearance as it is no longer shaped like a fish mouth. It returned to its normal state at 4 weeks after birth. Next, the vagina and perineum. The immediate post-delivery vagina remains quite stretched, may have some degree of edema and bruising, and open at the introitus. The vagina gradually returns to its pre-pregnancy size by 6 to 10 weeks after childbirth. The mucosa remains atrophic in lactating women at least until menstruation begins again. Thickening of vaginal mucosa occurs with the return of ovarian function. The size of vagina decreases with the return of vaginal rugae by about the third postpartum week. The torn hymen heals by the scar formation, leaving several tissue tags called myrietiform granules. Abrasions and lacerations of the vulva and perineum heal readily, including those requiring repairs. Endometrium. The following after delivery, major part of the decidua, that is the endometrium, is cast off with the expulsion of placenta and the membranes. The endometrium left behind in the varies size of thickness that may be from 2 to 5 mm. The superficial part containing degenerated decidua, blood cells and bits of fetal membranes become necrotic and is cast off in the lochia. Regeneration of endometrium starts by 7th, completed by the 10th day, and it is restored by the 16th day except placental site. It takes about 6 weeks. So regeneration of endometrium starts on the 7th to 10th day after the childbirth, and which completes on the 16th day excepting the placental site. It occurs from the epithelium of the uterine gland, mouths and intergranular stromal cells. Next is the pelvic muscular support. The supporting structure of the uterus and vagina may be injured during childbirth. The supportive tissue of the pelvic floor that are torn or stretched during childbirth may require the period of 6 months to regain its tone. Women are encouraged to do Kegel exercise after childbirth to strengthen the perineal muscles and promoting healing. The last organ which comes under the reproductive organ, that is the accessory organ of reproductive system, is the breast. So in the breast, for first 2 days following delivery, no further anatomical changes will occur in the breast. The secretion from the breast called colostrum, which will start during the pregnancy and will become more abundant during this period. Lactogenesis is initially triggered by the delivery of placenta. It will lead to the drop in placental hormone and increase in the prolactin hormone. That is, after delivery of placenta, there will be a drop of estrogen and there will be increase of prolactin hormone. In non-nursing women, the prolactin level decreases and return to normal within 2 to 3 weeks. So here the colostrum will secreted for first 2 days that contains protein, fat, minerals, immunoglobulin A, G. After 3 to 6 days, it will replaced by the milk which will be rich in the protein, lactose, water and fat. Next we will see the physiology of lactation, that is called as the lactogenesis. Milk secretion which actually starts on the third or fourth postpartum day. Around this time, the breast become engorged, tense, tender and feel warmth. When the progesterone and estrogen are withdrawn following delivery, prolactin begins its milk secretory activity in previously fully developed mammary glands. The secretory activity is enhanced by the growth hormone, thyroxine, glucocorticoids, and insulin. Next, we will see the discharge of milk from the mammary gland, that is called as the galactokinesis. Discharge of milk from the mammary gland depends not only on the suction exerted by the baby during suckling, but also it depends on the contractile mechanism which expresses the milk from the alveoli into the duct. Here, oxytocin is the major galactokinesis. Here we will see the cycle of galactokinesis, that is after suckling of the baby or during suckling a conditioned reflex is set up. Here the ascending impulses from the nipple cause posterior pituitary gland to liberate oxytocin, which will enter into the circulating blood in the breast. Oxytocin from the posterior pituitary produces contraction of the myoepithelial cells of the alveoli and the ducts containing milk. So here that oxytocin will cause contractions in the myoepithelial cells of the alveoli and duct, and then milk ejection will takes place. It is also called as the milk letdown reflex. The milk is forced down into the ampulla of lactiferous duct, where form it can be expressed by the mother or sucked by the baby. The milk ejection reflex is inhibited by the factors such as pain, breast engorgement, or adverse psychic condition. The ejection reflex may be deficient for several days following initiation of milk secretion in some women, that may lead to the breast engorgement. Maintenance of lactation, that is the galactopoiesis, means secretion of milk that is achieved by the continued release of prolactin from the anterior pituitary. And for the maintenance of effective and continuous lactation, sucking is very much essential. Next we will see the general physiological changes. which occur in the gastrointestinal system. First is the appetite. The mother is usually hungry shortly after giving birth. Then bowel evacuation. A spontaneous bowel evacuation may be delayed until 2 to 3 days after childbirth. This can be explained by decreased muscle tone of the intestine during labor and the immediate puerperium, pre-labor, diarrhea, lack of food or dehydration. So here mother will have constipation. Next one is the gastrointestinal hepatic function. GI tone and motility decreases in the early postpartum period, commonly causing constipation. Normal bowel function returns approximately 2 to 3 days postpartum. Liver function returns to the normal approximately 10 to 14 days postpartum. Gallbladder contractility increases to normal, allowing for expulsion of small gallstones. Next is the integumentary system, that is the skin. Chloisma of pregnancy usually disappears at the end of pregnancy. Hyperpigmentation of the areola, that is the secondary areola, and linea nigra. Linea nigra, it is the dark pigmentation which occurs during pregnancy from symphysis pubis up to the zipisternum, that may not regress completely after childbirth, and it may be permanent in some women. In some women it will be regress somewhat, not completely. Stretch marks on breast, abdomen, hips and thighs may fade but usually do not disappear. Hair growth hair growth slows during postpartum period, and some women may actually experience hair loss. It may be due to hormonal imbalance and also due to changes in the hair growth. Then cardiovascular system. Most dramatic changes occurs in this system. Cardiac output decreases, which was increased during pregnancy, and it will return to normal by 2 to 3 weeks postpartum. Hematocrit increases and increased red blood cell production stops. Leukocytosis with increased white blood cells which occur during the first postpartum week. Then blood volume. The blood volume which increases during pregnancy is now eliminated within first 2 weeks after birth, with the return to non-pregnant values by the 6th week postpartum. Cardiac output. Immediately after the birth, pulse rate, stroke volume and cardiac output remain elevated or increased for 30 to 60 minutes as the blood that shunted through uteroplacental circuit suddenly returns to the maternal systemic venous circulation. Next is the renal system changes. The renal pelvis and uterus, which were stretched and dilated during pregnancy, they will return to normal by the end of 4th postpartum week. Then we will see the weight loss after childbirth. Rapid diuresis and diaphoresis during 2nd and 5th day after birth result in the weight loss of about 2 to 4 kg. in addition to approx 5.8 kg lost at the birth. Then from the local flow, the weight loss or fluid loss of will be 1 kg. So here total loss, weight loss after delivery will be 13 to 14 kg, which was gained during the pregnancy. Additional weight loss depends on amount of weight gain in the pregnancy and active measures to reduce weight. How much weight was gained during pregnancy, that will be lost after childbirth, and it will be depend upon the active measures, that is exercise, which will be done by the mother. Next we will see the changes in vital sign. First is the temperature. The temperature is slightly elevated, that is for the 0.5 degree for the first 24 hours and up to 38 degrees is known. This rise in temperature is due to absorption of waste product of muscular contractions of labor. Transient rise in temperature later on is due to milk engorgement, maybe occur on the 4th day postpartum, constipation, nervous excitement or infection. Next is the pulse. Pulse is full and slow, about 60 to 70 beats per minute, is known as the physiological bradycardia, which occurs during 24 to 48 hours after birth. It may be due to the rest period after labor or increase in the circulatory blood volume on account of the elimination of placental pool. The pulse should remain below 100 beats per minute if all is going well. A rapid pulse may be brought on by pain, visitors, excitement, exhaustion, nursing infant, hemorrhage or infection. Next is the respiration. This is in the usual relation with pulse and temperature because of the reduction in size of uterus and relaxation of abdominal wall. Respiration is more abdominal in character. Deviation from normal may suggest pneumonia or embolism. Then blood pressure. No change is counted, but if hypotension is present, postpartum hemorrhage may be suspected. If hypertension is present, that is blood pressure more than 140 by 90 mm of Hg, postpartum toxemia may be suspected. Next we will discuss the blood and fluid changes. Marked leukocytosis and thrombocytosis may occur during and after labor. The leukocyte count sometimes reaches 30,000 later with the increase. There is also a relative lymphopenia, that is decrease in the lymphocyte, and an absolute eosinopenia, that is decrease in the eosinophils. Normally during the first few postpartum days, hemoglobin concentration and hematocrit fluctuates moderately. If they fall much below the level present just prior to labor, a considerable amount of blood has been lost. By 1 week after delivery, the blood volume has returned nearly to its non-pregnant level. Next is the neurological system. Discomfort and fatigue are common. After pains and discomfort from the delivery, laceration, episiotomy and muscle aches are common. Frontal and bilateral headaches are common and are caused by fluid shift in the first week postpartum. The elimination of physiological edema through the diuresis that occurs after childbirth will relieve carpal tunnel syndrome, by easing the compression of the median nerve. Carpal tunnel syndrome, it is the pin-like sensation in the fingers which occur during pregnancy due to compression of the median nerve. So after elimination of the edema, there will be easing of the compression of median nerve. So the carpal tunnel syndrome will relieve. Next we will see the menstruation and ovulation. The onset of first menstrual period, that is depend mainly on the lactation. If the woman does not breastfeed her baby, the menstruation will return by the 6th week following delivery in about 40% of cases. And if woman is breastfeeding her baby, the menstruation may be suspended in about 70% cases until the baby stops breastfeeding. It may be for 1 to 2 years. In non-lactating mothers, ovulation may occur as early as 4 weeks, and in the lactating mothers, ovulation may occur on the 10th week after delivery. Next, we will discuss the nursing management of the postpartum period. The principles of management of postnatal care is to restore the health of mother, then to prevent infection, third, to take care of the breast, and fourth, to motivate the mother for contraceptive acceptance. Nursing care during the postpartum provides the means by which the parturient can restore her physical and emotional health, as well as gain experience in caring for her new infant. Component of care during the postpartum period is the care of mother, that is immediate care, subsequent daily care, and care of newborn infant. Objectives of the immediate care of mother are to secure physical and mental rest, restore normal good muscle tone, and maintain normal body functions, to provide proper adequate nutrition, and to guard against infection. Teach the mother how to care for herself and for the infant. Foster and maintain family ties and adjust the parents to their new role, and to encourage for the breastfeeding. The immediate attention should be given, and mother should be closely observed in the fourth stage of labor. Then rest and ambulation. Physician's order for the rest and ambulation may vary according to mother's condition, type of analgesia or anesthesia, and the type of labor. Each woman should be assisted and accompanied first time she gets up, and thereafter as indicated until she feels no dizziness, weakness, lightheadedness, or any other indication that she might faint or fall. Then diet. The woman may be given regular diet, that is the normal diet after delivery. For a woman who is having hemorrhage, or high protein diet should be recommended to promote the tissue healing. If the woman is breastfeeding, she requires high protein, high calorie diet and plenty of fluids. Next is the perineal care. A routine perineal care should be provided to the mother. The woman should be instructed clearly about how to clean herself after urination, defecation, and provision of supplies and equipment should be made available. Mother should be instructed to wash hands before and after perineal care, not touch her stitch area with the fingers if uncomfortable or any itching she is having. Then wipe with the wet cotton or disposable wipe from front to back across the stitches. Application of a perineal pad should be enough so that there will be no back or forth with the movement. Then application and removal of pad should be from front to back. Then care of bladder. The anatomical changes which are described earlier, that is there will be a stretching of the bladder and ureters. So here the woman should be encouraged to pass urine 4 to 8 hours following delivery and thereafter 4 to 6 hours interval. At this time, if the woman fails to pass the urine, then mother should be checked for any perineal injuries that may happen during the labor process. If uh, all measures are failed in passing the urine, like pouring of water, then hearing the sound of running water or tap water, then perineal relaxation also failed, that time the catheterization should be done to empty the bladder. The principle of bladder care is to ensure adequate drainage of urine so that infection will not occur. Then care of bowel. Mother will have the problem of constipation as we have seen before. So here early ambulation should be advised and liberation of the dietary intake should be provided. A diet must containing the sufficient roughage and fluids that will help to prevent the constipation. If necessary, mild laxatives can be administered. Then sleep. Postpartum woman needs physical and mental rest. She should be protected against the undue fatigue and worries also. Sleep may be ensured by administering diazepam 5 mg orally at the bedtime if mother is unable to sleep properly, if she has any discomfort due to after pain or painful piles or engorged breast, that time analgesic should be administered. Then care of breast. Breast should be examined daily and breast should be cleaned before and after feeding. A nursing brassiere can provide comfortable support, so mother has to wear the nursing brassiere. And nipple should be washed before and after each feeding, and the breast should be dried after feeding. Then uterus and involution. The uterine fundus should be carefully palpated each postnatal day to ensure adequate involution. The subinvolution may be there if any retained tissue or a retained clot or any cotyledons is inside the uterus. So Subinvolution should be concluded. Subinvolution is the condition where uterus fails to regain its non or pre-pregnant state, that is identified on the several days after the delivery. The uterus should be checked for any tenderness that may be a suggestive of infection. Then rooming in, the baby should be kept with the mother in cot or beside her on the bed. It will help to maintain a good mother-child relationship. It will enhance the bonding between mother and child. Then immunization. Immunization should be done after delivery. Then postpartum exercise. Objectives of postpartum exercise are to improve the tone of abdominal and perineal muscles, to educate mother about the correct posture in different working positions. These postpartum exercises are more helpful to gain pre-pregnant state in the postpartum period. The nursing interventions for the postpartum exercises are: first one is the deep abdominal breathing. It is one of the postnatal exercise which helps to tone the abdominal wall and abdominal muscles. Then head and shoulder raising exercises. Then leg raising exercise, pelvic tilt exercise and sit-ups. Then Kegel exercise. This helps to tone the muscles of pelvic floor. This is the care which should be given to the postpartum mother. Next we will see the physical assessment and daily care. The nurse should follow an organized method when examining the postpartum client, which provides a consistent quality approach to the nursing care. So ask the mother if since she delivered she is ambulatory or not, she has passed bowels or not, has no flatus or experiencing some flatus, has voided her bladder or not. Then the abnormal findings should be noted down. Then the physical assessment should be carried out. That is, here we can say one acronym, that is the bubbly HE, that stands for the B for breast, U for uterine fundus, B for bladder, B for bowel, L for lochia, E for episiotomy, H for Homensign and E for emotions. So first we will see the assessment of breast. Breast should be inspected for the redness and engorgement. Engorgement is the congestion of milk in the breast which will lead the breast to be more heavier, warm and painful. Palpate the breast to determine if they are soft or feeling warm, engorged or tender. Teach to promote milk production and letdown. The methods to prevent and treat engorgement. Ensure proper brachial fitness. The nipple should be soft, pliable, intact and everted. If mother is non-breastfeeding, do not palpate the breast or assess nipples, as it will lead to the milk ejection. and that should not happen in the non-breastfeeding mother. Massaging will trigger the uh, mammary glands to expel the milk into the areola. Then abnormal findings in the breast may be redness, heat, pain, cracked nipples, fissured nipple, inverted nipple, palpable mass, painful breast, bleeding, bruised, blistered or cracked nipple. Then assessment of the uterine fundus. It should be formed, if not massaged prior to the palpation, and assess for any blood discharge during the massage. Then assess its location and the degree of uterine contraction. Any tenderness or pain should be noted. The normal findings in the uterine fundus is of the normal size and shape. It is mobile, regular, firm. It is in the midline, below the umbilicus and non-tender. Abnormal findings are immobile uterine fundus, irregular, soft, tender, deviated from the midline or above the umbilicus after 24 hours. Fundal height should be measured in centimeter. It should be above or below the umbilicus. After 24 hours, it should be come to the below umbilicus. Fundus is 2 centimeter below the level of umbilicus immediately after birth, and then it will gradually descend 1 centimeter per day, and on the 10th day it will be non-palpable abdominally. If the fundus is deviated or elevated above the level of umbilicus, then this is the abnormal finding. It may be due to distended bladder. Once the midwife has completed the assessment, she helps to dress and sit up to the client. Then bladder. The risk for urinary tract infection is increased if client was catheterized during the labor and delivery. May have bruising and swelling caused by the trauma around the urinary meatus. Increased bladder capacity along with the decreased sensitivity to pressure leads to the urinary retention. Diuresis occurs during the first 2 days after delivery. Bladder distension may displace the uterus, leading to boggy uterus and increased risk of atony. So here the bladder must be emptied after the delivery, and mother should pass urine within first 24 hours of delivery. If she fails to pass the urine within 24 hours, then we have to catheterize the mother. Nurse should be teach mother to control the pain and control the bleeding. After delivery, the client should be assisted to the toilet at the first 2 to 3 times to protect against the fall. Early ambulation and comfort will facilitate urination. After delivery, the client should be able to urinate within 4 hours, and it may be of at least 300 ml with complete emptying of bladder. Complaints of urinary frequency, dysuria, retention, and inability to void for 6 to 8 hours after delivery should be noted and informed to the physician. Next is the bowels and gastrointestinal system. The client's appetite typically will return to normal in 1 to 2 hours after delivery. The client, if she is having vomiting during labor, she may not have an appetite. That time she should be encouraged to increase her fluid intake. Diet rich in protein and iron is needed to promote the tissue healing and to restore iron level due to blood loss. Then bowel evacuation. Following vaginal delivery, bowel movement normally occurs in 2 to 3 days later. When gastric motility does not return by 2 to 3 days, constipation may occur. When constipation is severe, then administration of analgesic and stool softener should be there. It should be administered, and ambulation should be advised to the mother to facilitate the bowel movement. Mineral oil or suppository or enema should be given to stimulate the intestinal activity. Otherwise, sitz bath or topical medications and stopping other medications may be helpful. In order to avoid the constipation, clients should be encouraged to drink 6 to 8 glasses of fluid daily and eat high fiber diet. It will help a lot. Next is the lochia. Lochia, it is the uterine discharge of blood, mucous tissue after the childbirth. As involution progresses, the vaginal loss reflects this and it changes from fresh blood loss to a whitish discharge. Lochia rubra is a dark red color, then Lochia serosa is the pinkish, and Lochia alba is the creamy yellowish discharge. When lochia subsides, uterus is considered closed, or the uterus is considered as of the pre-pregnant state. On examination of lochia, the nurse should note that the amount of lochia, color, consistency, odor, and presence of any clots into the lochia. The amount is assessed in relation to time, that is scant, that is the amount of lochia, heavy or scanty, then light or very dark, moderate and heavy. It should be odorless with no clots and gets less each day. Also assess woman's pad changing practices and her type of pad. Teach proper wiping and progression of lochia. Abnormal findings are heavy flow of the lochia, fall odor, bright red bleeding, clots and amount more than a period. Then for assessing the lochia, we have to ask question, is the blood loss more or less? Then color and the amount of blood loss. Any concern about the blood loss? Ask if she has passed any clot and when it occurred. Ask the mother to describe the size of vaginal loss, that is the amount of lochia in sanitary pad, frequency of changing the pad because of saturation level, and comparison of clots to familiar items. Next is the assessment of episiotomy. Inspect with patient in Sims position, then lift buttock to expose perineum and anus. If present, assess episiotomy or laceration for rheda. Episiotomy is the surgical incision made on the perineum to enlarge the vaginal opening for the delivery of baby's head, which may be midline or mediolateral or J-shaped. There may be presence of lacerations during childbirth. By using a good light source, the visualization of episiotomy should be done for the RIDA. RIDA means that is redness, edema, ecchymosis, discharge and approximation. Redness is the sign of infection, then edema, ecchymosis. Ecchymosis is the a collection of blood under the skin, then discharge, any watery or pus discharge, and approximation is the healing of wound approximately, that is at the age. Then should have minimal tenderness with gentle palpation, then no hardened area and hematoma. Assess for the knowledge, practice and effectiveness of self-perineal care. Educate about the suture absorption. Advise mother for treating the pain. Then note any abnormal findings, that is edema, wound, or any sign of infection or any discomfort in the perineal area. Next is the extremities. In that we will see the Homan sign. First we have to assess for any signs of deep vein thrombosis, for the asymmetry, any size, color and temperature. Then assess for the signs of superficial thrombophlebitis. In that redness, warmth, tenderness, pain at the limb, that is mainly in the lower limb, and darkening of the skin over or hardening of veins. This is the image of assessing Homan sign, where in order to perform the test, have the client straighten her legs flat on the bed. Place one hand under the knee in the popliteal region for the support. Place the other hand on the foot and dorsiflex it. Presence of calf pain during sharp dorsiflexion in either foot is the sign of presence of deep vein thrombosis. Clients should be taught to prevent the thrombophlebitis, that is, uh, do not remain in the bed for longer period after delivery. It can lead to formation of clots in the legs, which can develop into thrombophlebitis or thromboembolism. Other ways to prevent the thrombus formation are keeping the legs uncrossed while sitting, not flexing the legs at the groin, resting the legs without putting pressure on the back of knees, wearing support shoes or anti-embolic stockings when varicosities are present, then padding pressure points during lithotomy position. Nurse should examine the calves for redness, hardness or nodules along the leg vein. In addition, check the ankles and Pretibial areas for edema. Assess the client for any sign of pulmonary embolism such as dyspnea, cough, and chest pain. Next is the emotional status. The immediate postpartum period is an emotional roller coaster for the mother. So nurse should be continually assess the mother for appropriate response to her infant. However, mother may feel exhausted, she needs sleep and rest to restore her body's health. In this phase, mother wish to meet their own rest and nutritional needs before focusing their energy on the newborns. So here, attainment of parental role, infant care and family adaptation should be assessed closely. Then other assessment that includes sleep deprivation, ability to rest, energy level, comfort level, anxiety level, appetite, bonding behavior and support system. Lastly, we will see the nursing care of mother, that is after admission to the postnatal ward. The daily care should be taken in that checking vital signs, then palpate the uterus, then check for the lochia, then observe the perineum and suture line, then provide sufficient period of rest and sleep, proper positioning, then prevent infection, monitor laboratory reports for the HB, HCT and WBC, observe for any mental changes postpartum, then meet the mother's need to enable her to meet the infant's need, then assist for the mother's self-care and infant care, then visits and follow-up should be taken for the involution, then evaluate client response, then promotion of bladder and bowel function, then proper diet should be provided to the mother, then care of perineum, medication, next care of infant, that is the nursing assessment first should be done to observe general condition, checking the cord, physical needs, cleanliness, feeding, warmth, sleep of the baby, then external environment of the baby. Discuss the infant care with mother, then encourage skin to skin contact, and advise mother about the contraceptive methods. About contraceptive methods, you have already learned in the second year, third year. So here we have finished the normal puparium. I will take a review of today's topic. Today we have discussed the puparium, its definition, stages of puparium, then changes, anatomical and physiological changes which takes place during the puparium systemically. First in the reproductive system. In that reproductive system, uterus, cervix, then lochia, vagina, breast, and in breast the physiology of lactation we have discussed. Then other systems we have discussed, that is gastrointestinal, gastrohepatic changes, renal system, then weight loss, fluid loss, vital signs, changes in the vital sign, then menstruation and ovulation. Also we have seen the changes in the endocrine system. Next we have discussed the physical assessment in the postpartum period, that is in that bubbly AG, the breast, uterine fundus, bladder, bowel, lochia, episiotomy, hormone sign and emotions. And lastly we have discussed about the nursing care which is given to the postnatal client and contraceptive methods. Thank you.